Hey y'all, it's Thursday, May 22nd, and this is your Arkansas News Daily Briefing, where we skip the fluff, skip the spin, and just break down what's actually going on in Arkansas today. So let's get started. Arkansas has trimmed its expected revenue surplus for the current fiscal year. The DFNA said it now projects a $214 million surplus for fiscal year 2025. That is down from a $278 million estimate. Now, they explain that the drop is mostly due to the extension of tax filing deadlines after the recent storms, which means that some revenue that would have hit this fiscal year will now fall into next fiscal year. So it's more of a revenue shift than a revenue fall. The surplus projection for fiscal year 2026, though, has also been reduced from nearly $300 million to around $185 million. Finance Secretary Jim Hudson said that that's tied in part to uncertainty about potential tariffs under President Donald Trump's trade policy. Though Hudson did say he didn't actually think that we would see a lot of negative effects from tariffs, he said, "I think we have the perception of what the effects could be, and that's creating a sense of volatility." Hudson also noted that Arkansas's agricultural sector could actually benefit if new trade deals materialize, particularly with China, the UK, or India. But even with the revised numbers, the state fully expects to fund its education, corrections, and other major programs. And on a positive note, Arkansas received a credit rating bump from the S&P to its highest rating since 1966. There was also some questions around whether we would have another special session on tax cuts this year. And the governor's office has said that all options are on the table, but legislative leaders like Senator Jonathan Dismang and Representative Lane Jean say that they're not expecting a special session at this time. Moving on to some court news, the Arkansas Supreme Court has reinstated a lawsuit that was filed by our Attorney General Tim Griffin against the State Board of Corrections. This lawsuit has been sent back to the Pulaski County Circuit Court for further proceedings. The case centers around whether the Board of Corrections violated Arkansas's Freedom of Information Act by hiring private legal counsel during a closed executive session, and whether it failed to properly respond to a FOIA request from the AG's office. The lawsuit was dismissed last year by Judge Tim Fox, who ordered Griffin's office to reach an accommodation with the board to ensure that it had legal representation. When no agreement was reached, Fox dismissed the case. But the Supreme Court disagreed with Fox, stating that Griffin could not legally comply with the judge's order because it would have required the Attorney General to authorize or legitimize the board's outside legal counsel, which he believed was unlawful under Arkansas statute. Back in April of 2024, the Joint Performance Review Committee, that's a legislative committee, voted to support the AG's position, determining that the Board of Corrections did not have authority to hire outside legal counsel under state law. The Board of Corrections also filed a separate lawsuit in December, claiming that Governor Sanders and Corrections Secretary Joe Porfiry were bypassing the board's authority by using statutory loopholes. In response to Thursday's decision, AG Griffin said that he takes defending the FOIA laws seriously and will not tolerate those who violate it. Now the case will return to Pulaski County Circuit Court, where the question of whether the board violated Arkansas's open government laws will be litigated in full. Staying with court news, a federal judge has ordered Crawford County and the state of Arkansas to pay more than $400,000 in attorney fees and legal costs after losing a lawsuit over Arkansas Act 372. This was a 2023 law that sought to criminalize librarians and booksellers for providing minors access to certain materials. The lawsuit was filed in June of 2023 by a coalition of 17 plaintiffs. Those included the Fayetteville Public Library, the Central Arkansas Library System, independent booksellers, and civil liberties groups. They challenged two sections of that Act 372. One section which made it a misdemeanor to furnish certain content to minors, and another section which imposed new complex procedures for reviewing and removing books in public libraries. Now, that group of 17 plaintiffs argued that the law was vague and unconstitutional, and that it would chill access to protected speech and expose librarians to prosecution just for doing their jobs. So in late 2023, U.S. District Judge Timothy Brooks up in Fayetteville issued a summary judgment in their favor. So basically, Judge Brooks ruled without there actually being a trial because he believed the facts were not in dispute and that the law clearly favored the plaintiffs. He ruled that both challenged sections did violate the First Amendment, and he issued a permanent injunction blocking enforcement of those parts of the law. This past Wednesday, Judge Brooks ruled that the state and Crawford County must cover the legal bills for the plaintiffs. That's that $441,000. The judge held the state and Crawford County jointly and severably liable, meaning that either party could be required to pay the full amount. Crawford County has argued that the state should bear the full financial responsibility since the legislature was the one that passed the law and that Crawford County never actually enforced it. But Judge Fox rejected that, pointing out that Crawford County chose to hire separate counsel and they filed multiple legal motions that contributed to the overall cost. Now, this is not the first time that Crawford County's library policies have landed them in court. In 2023, the county was ordered to pay nearly $113,000 after a federal judge found that the county had violated the First Amendment by segregating LGBTQ-themed books in a social issues section of the library following public complaints. In that case, there was pressure from the Crawford County Quorum Court, which had leaned on library leaders to move certain titles, particularly those in the children's section, based on content. Moving over to elections, the State Board of Election Commissioners met this week and issued strong sanctions that decertified all 3 members of an unnamed county election commission after investigating complaints tied to last year's general election. Now, the commission did not name the county, but it said the board would be closely involved with that area's elections operations moving forward. Among the violations are unauthorized changes to voter addresses, intimidation of poll watchers, and delayed delivery of provisional ballots. Also in that meeting, it voted to reprimand Pulaski County Clerk Terry Hollingsworth because a deputy clerk had changed the street addresses of 132 voters without authorization. The error was caught on those changes, but not before 4 voters had cast the wrong ballots. Moving on to more court news, a bench trial is scheduled to begin today in Pulaski County Circuit Court over the removal of a Confederate statue from MacArthur Park in 2020. Attorney Joey McCutcheon is representing a local resident who said the city violated Act 1003, a state law passed in 2021 that restricts the removal of historical monuments. The city argues the law doesn't apply because the statue was removed before the act was passed and because the city already resolved the issue in a 2020 settlement with the state, which included a $45,000 payment to support a statue of civil rights leader Daisy Bates being erected. The outcome of this trial could set a precedent for further monument-related disputes across the state, which we all know that we've seen quite a few of those. And in our last story, the Carroll County Quorum Court voted this week to adopt a 5-year moratorium on new commercial wind and solar energy projects. That decision follows years of debate on the Nimbus Wind project. That's a 30-turbine installation currently under construction near Green Forest by Scout Clean Energy. Now, the moratorium doesn't affect that particular project, but it does block any expansion of that project or any new projects during the 5-year window. Supporters of the ordinance say that they want time to develop appropriate regulations and to prevent future conflicts between residents and developers. This has been a very controversial project. The ordinance passed unanimously and it takes effect immediately. That decision makes Carroll County the second county in Arkansas to pass a moratorium on wind farms following Madison County's similar decision in December. So that is it for today's Free News Arkansas. If you like what we're doing, you can help us grow by subscribing, sharing, and sending us tips on stories you'd like to hear. That's it. We'll see you next week.